What would have happened if Rengoku had defeated Akaza? What if Rengoku managed to keep Akaza until daybreak? Let's find out. So I came up with 3 possible scenarios, each of which has a different set of events that happened. However, the final scenario is particularly noteworthy because it may be the closest thing to a perfect headcanon ever created. So without any further ado, let's begin. In the very first scenario, although highly unlikely, we will assume that Rengoku is much stronger than he's shown at that point. He would fight Akaza until he has cornered him enough for the sun to come out and finish the job once and for all. Now, doing this would make the Hashira count still full, while Muzan would have 1 less upper moon. Now, this will piss him off quite a lot, as he actually has high expectations of his upper moons, unlike his experience with the lower ones. An angered Muzan would send someone other than Daki and Gyutaro to the red light district, as he would want revenge right then and there. He would most probably send Doma, but let's assume that the events of the red light district go just as they do in the original manga. But then Muzan would have 1 less moon to fall back on, and thus the upper 2 moons. Doma and Kokushibu will be much more aggressive in their approach and will finish their fights later, killing most of their opponents much earlier and taking as less damage as possible, since the reason they were lost were because of their sluggishness. And having Rengoku in there, would the other one, Hashira, during the Infinity Castle arc, would be like having 1 more bee in the nest. It means that it would make no difference, as he can only alter the outcome of only 1 battle at max. In the Infinity Castle arc, this would still lead to the sacrifice of many Hashira and the Demon Slayer corpse losing their battle. Thus, this concludes the first scenario. Personally, I have decent hopes for this scenario working, so I'll give it a solid 7 out of 10. Do you think this is a justifiable scenario? Let me know in the comments below. This is only the first scenario. There are still 2 scenarios left. Make sure to finish it until the end because the 3rd scenario will shock you. Now for the second scenario, if Rengoku actually uses some of his brain cells and does what he should be capable of doing quite easily, that is, taking Tanjiro and the others and running away from the fight entirely. This looks pretty much impossible to do, but if he stalls for some time, looks for an opening and abandons the train passengers entirely, then it is quite possible for him to just make a run for it with Tanjiro and others. This would allow him to come back with 1 or 2 backup Hashiras, and then the scenarios can go in various different ways. First off, if Akaza withdraws from the fight right there, then the Demon Slayer corpse would be at advantage, as he would probably take the trio as his Suguko. He will train them, thus making Tanjiro proficient in sun breathing. This would put the Red Light District arc into question, as Tengen is not as strong as him, and that's why he faced so much trouble while he was facing off against Daki and Gyutaro. With our flame homie alive, they would have a field day playing baseball with their heads. But this also means that Rengoku probably faces the upper moon too, Doma, in the Infinity Train arc, because that's where the links were the weakest. Or he might have just faced Akaza again with Gyu and Tanjiro. If he faces Doma, then that would severely affect the outcome, as he would try his best to save Shinobu's life. But we all know that it's exactly her sacrifice that enabled everyone to defeat him in the first place. With him there, Doma survives and thus aids Muzan into the final battle, killing all of them and thus making Muzan the winner of the battle. However, the situation changes if he actually faces Akaza again, because that way Tanjiro, Gyu, and him would be done with their fight early and reach Muzan in the regeneration stage. This would allow them to defeat Muzan early with only the loss of Shinobu and some others, as everyone who died during the Muzan battle would still be alive. All of this, coupled with the fact that Tengen does not retire after his fight in the Red Light District 2, seems to be the best possible outcome for the Demon Slayer corpse. But frankly, this is a pretty ideal scenario where a lot of convenient things happen, so it's pretty much a headcanon, and a rather bad one at that. Will Rengoku be of any help against Muzan? If you have some better explanation, I'm listening. Now this was a scenario number 2. Personally, this one seems a lot more doable. So I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10. Now coming to the third and the most interesting possibility, which has the highest chances of working, he manages to hold out until the sun comes out. Now this is a really plausible scenario, and this way neither Akaza nor Rengoku doesn't survive. This moderately changes the equation as follows. Since Akaza is ranked number 3 among the moons and is one of Muzan's most favorite pawns, his death would worry Muzan a lot, or at least it would be really pissed. A pissed Muzan would probably call upon an upper moon meeting, and this means bad news for the corpse. Since Akaza would be the first upper moon to die in 100 years, there will be a lot of Rukus. Now since he needs a new number 3, now he has a few options here. One would be promoting the lower ranked ones and filling the spot by that method. The second would be probably by separating Daki and Gyutaro, if it is even possible, and making Gyutaro number 3, while Daki moves up to become his upper moon number 5. Now this would fill the spot, but it might make Daki a lot easier to kill for anyone who is Hashira level. He might give someone his blood and make a new powerful demon, as he does with Biwa Woman, who becomes Upper Moon 4 after the real Upper Moon 4 dies during the Swordsmith Village arc. But this doesn't really mean anything, as there's no guarantee that any new number 3 would be as strong as Akaza. But this doesn't really impact the story as much until the second Lost arc, because up until that point, apart from Rengoku dying and Tengen being retired, not a single Hashira has been lost. So, coming to the Fortress arc, the second last arc of the series, the Hashira now knows about the existence of the marks and the power they gain with them, because Mitsuri and Muichiro have both manifested them. Now the matchups go as Zenitsu fights the replacement Upper Moon 6. The replacement guy happens to have a history with a Thunder Freak, as he was his former bully. Pretty understandable why anyone would want to bully someone as annoying as Zenitsu. Now, the next one is Obanai and Mitsuri versus Upper Moon 4, the Biwa Woman. Tanjiro and Gyu versus Akaza. You know, the guy we just killed in this headcanon. Shinobu, Kanao, and Inosuke versus Upper Moon 2. Hashiras don't really survive fighting such high-rank Upper Moons, but no one said anything about these little kids fighting alongside them, right? The last one is Sanemi, Muichiro, Gyome, Jinya versus the Upper Moon 1, the pinnacle of Muzan's demons, and of course it happens to be a swordsman. Japanese are too obsessed with them, but Akaza is dead at this scenario, so that leaves Gyu and Tanjiro with no opponent to fight here, since all of these characters really didn't want to be separated from one another, but it all happened to be, so they'll try to go to any one of the fights. If they join the Zenitsu one, then that's a waste of resources, as Zenitsu takes care of his opponent by himself. They might join the Upper Moon 4 fight, but their strength would be a waste here, since it's just Upper Moon 4. Now, if they go towards the Upper Moon 2 fight, then they'd be the most helpful ones. But that guy, Doma, requires Shinobu's sacrifice to be defeated, and if these two arrive there, they would definitely try to save her, leading to an all-out collapse. Do you agree with my speculations? But all of this is only possible if we assume that this time Muzan will be cocky enough to walk into the explosion trap set at the Demon Slayer headquarters, focusing him into a natural recovery state, which is the reason that the corpse even have a chance, because if Muzan doesn't walk into the trap, he completely obliterates everyone since he's so strong, and then consumes Nezuko so that he can become the ultimate being and survive even in daylight. Now, if he sends any of the higher Upper Moons against the other Hashiras even before the final battle, then they would just pick them off one by one. But let's just suppose that he's actually still cocky. If he walks into the trap and gets bamboozled, then the Upper 2 Moons would just be more aggressive with no Akaza around and would kill the Hashiras and everyone else before they actually use the tricks and other stuffs at their disposal to defeat these monsters. Now, this is one scenario I could bet something on. I'd give this one a solid 9 out of 10. So Rengoku dying during the Infinity Train arc after killing the Upper Moon 6 and killing Akaza seems like a really good deal on paper, but the fact that the next set of events occur in a very specific fashion makes things quite tough for any other scenario that what happened in the anime possible. If he takes him out without a loss, he makes things worse. If he takes him and still dies in the process, even then 8 times out of 10 it ends up being a scenario where the villains actually win. So Rengoku's death while being the only way to actually make people like the character, also happens to be quite important plot-wise. Now, because without that, a lot of things just don't happen. So weighing Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke becoming a teeny tiny bit stronger than earlier and winning the war and actually killing the demons, we can conclude that Rengoku is much better off dead than he is alive, as his survival means the end of the manga before the end actually arrives.